With just a few more practices left before the blue and gold game, these are the most important developments coming out of Notre Dame spring practice sessions.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Irish. Today is Wednesday, April 10th, and thank you for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports. And as always, you can watch this episode on YouTube or you can listen wherever you get your podcast. Quick reminder, though, if you are watching along on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up below and subscribe to the channel. Or if you're listening to the pod, please take a moment, rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, and subscribe there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's get into it. Notre Dame wrapped up its 9th spring practice on Tuesday, and they have a few more left before the blue and gold game on April 20th. But I feel like at this point, we've already learned a lot about this team, and there are some very important developments I want to go over in today's episode. This is based on everything that's been available to the media, some of the reports that are out there, plus some things that I've been hearing from behind the scenes as well. So I've got 9 bullet points that I want to talk through, and these are new things, right? Like, I'm not going to go over the obvious ones like Howard Cross and Riley Mills are going to be great on the interior of the defensive line. We know that already, right? But let's start with what I think is the most important development as of late, and that is quarterback Riley Leonard's spring hasn't gone as planned, obviously, but he should be full go by summer workouts. Obviously, it's been a really unfortunate part of this spring session in that Riley Leonard has not been able to be a full participant with the team. He's done his best, man. I've been really impressed by the amount of effort that Leonard has put into just being on the field, being around the team, and trying to soak up as much as he possibly can as he recovers from his second ankle surgery of the year. He actually provided an update about that surgery after practice on Tuesday, and he said that he would be 50-50, he'd be 50-50 to play in the blue and gold game if it were an actual regular season game. I don't think that's true. I'm going to be honest. I think that's Riley Leonard just being extremely optimistic, but he has been out there with a boot on, or if it's not considered an actual boot, it's like a very intense brace on that ankle. But he's out there. He's suited up. He's been throwing the ball around the yard as much as he can. Now, he's not doing every single drill, and he's not going out there with full 11-on-11 or anything like that, but he's trying. He's doing his best, and I genuinely believe that the recovery on this second surgery has gone as planned. And to clarify about that second surgery, he said that the plate that was put in his ankle after the first surgery caused a stress fracture in his fibula. So that is why they had to go in there, have a second surgery and clean that up a little bit. I don't think it's anything too severe. And the fact that he's already out there on the practice field is certainly encouraging. So there's a bunch of positive signs about Leonard, despite the fact that no matter what, this isn't going to be a success for Notre Dame and for Leonard in terms of what we were hoping he would get out of the spring practice. But I still think it's very important that even though he was not able to do everything that we would have hoped he would be able to, I do think that by the time June comes around, he will be a full participant as Notre Dame starts their summer workouts, and I feel very good about that. And I think that Leonard is going to have some catching up to do, but he's going to get there because he's just a very, very hard worker. Okay, number 2. Things are clicking for linebacker Jalen Sneed. I think he's on his way to being a complete linebacker as early as this season. We always knew that Jalen Sneed had elite athleticism. That was the big reason why he was a 5-star coming out of high school, why Marcus Freeman prioritized him from the moment he became the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, and why it was such a big get for Notre Dame. Now, I don't want to say these first 2 years have been a disappointment, because I think as soon as we all saw Jalen Sneed on campus for the first time, it was very clear that he had a lot of growing to do physically in order to be a big-time college linebacker. He has done that over the course of the past 2 years, and he was still a very raw athlete. You would see that last year when he would just blow by guys. He'd be in the backfield right away, and you'd be like, oh, here comes Jalen Sneed ready to make a big play. And then he just wouldn't wrap up the guy, or he wouldn't make the correct angle on a tackle, and he'd let the guy go by him. That's not to say that he didn't make some really good plays. That play he had on 4th and goal against Ohio State was huge, and I thought it would be a taking off point for the rest of his season. It didn't turn out to be that way. But I think that the most important thing for Sneed has been learning the fundamentals, getting those down. So he's doing the right thing every play. He knows where to be. And I think that's all starting to come together for him. And that's a very big development for Jalen Snead, because when Snead is on the field, he makes the case to be one of, if not the best athlete on the grass at all times. So if he's putting it all together, if he's getting the fundamentals down, if he knows where to be, and he's making the simple plays, that's a bad thing for opposing offenses and a great thing for this Notre Dame defense. I think because of his athleticism, Al Golden and Max Bullock can get really creative with him and where they put him on the field, because we know he's really good at getting after the passer, and I still think that's going to be a huge part of his game. But if he can line up on the edge there and make the offense think that he's going to be blitzing around the edge, they have to adjust, and then he can go out and cover in the flat and just change things up for the offense and put them out of sorts a little bit. I think that's huge for Notre Dame, and I think he's going to be a very valuable asset on this Notre Dame defense this year, who already has a bunch of great players. But if Snead's able to take his game to the next level, I think the entire defense will head to the next level as well. Okay, my third one here is back on the offense, and it involves the wide receivers. I think Jaden Greathouse has a chance to be wide receiver one by the start of the season. Now, last season he came out scorching hot out of the gate, scoring 2 touchdowns against Navy in the season opener, and you're thinking, wow, is this guy going to have an unbelievable freshman season? I think he still had a really good year, ended up with 5 receiving touchdowns, but because of a hamstring injury that he suffered it was either against Ohio State or in the week of practice after that Ohio State game, his freshman year took a little bit of a dip, but then he finished strong again, and I think a lot of people are really excited about what he can do in his sophomore season, because he's extremely versatile. He's a slot receiver, but he can also play the field, and I think in Mike Denbrock's offense, where they're going to try to spread defenses out a little bit more, Jaden Greathouse is going to be extremely valuable. I think he's going to be the favorite to lead the team in receptions, even if Mitchell Evans is healthy and he plays the full season, and even if Jane Thomas is healthy and plays the full season. I think that Jaden Greathouse is going to be the most valuable wide receiver on the team, because he's a really good possession receiver. He can make plays, especially in short yardage situations. He's someone who I would trust on third down to make a catch over the middle, but he's also fast enough to take the top off the defense a little bit and make contested catches downfield. That is not the case for every wide receiver on this roster, and I think that this year, now that Notre Dame has really rounded out that room, there's more talented guys. Like Chris Mitchell is another guy who I've heard has been really impressive in spring practice. We have high hopes for Bo Collins, the transfer from Clemson, once he gets on the practice field. And, you've got Jordan Faison once he's able to participate. Like, there's other guys in that room that are going to require the attention of the defense, and I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for Jaden Greathouse to really step up, make some plays, and just be a really consistent, reliable receiver for Riley Leonard to throw to. There's a reason why he was so accomplished in high school, one of, if not the most accomplished wide receiver in the history of high school football in Texas. He was a really, really big-time recruit when Notre Dame landed him. He played right away, and I think that he is a player who is capable of breaking out as a sophomore, and that would be a huge development for Notre Dame, because as great as it is to add all these transfers into that room, when you have a homegrown guy, a big-time recruit like Jaden Greathouse stepping up his game to the next level, becoming that wide receiver one as a sophomore, I think that bodes well for that position group, the offense, and the team as a whole. So I am really, really excited about what Jaden Greathouse can do this season. Okay, we got a lot more to get to. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you which position group I believe has already asserted itself as the best on the entire team. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we continue with the most important developments coming out of Notre Dame spring practice thus far at number 4. And at number 4, I have Kingston Vamasa and Bryce Young are the best freshmen on the team right now. And I would put wide receiver Mikey Gilbert right behind them. It is a very thin gap in between those two at the top and Mikey Gilbert. But let's start with Kingston Vamasa, because coming into the spring, I feel like everyone knew that KVA was the most physically ready to play of all of the freshmen, especially the early enrollee freshmen. Like Marcus Freeman even mentioned it at the signing day press conference. He felt like KVA was going to step on campus ready to go. And it makes sense, right? He played high school at St. John Bosco, one of the best programs in the entire country. And they're located not that far from me out here in Los Angeles. And I can tell you that the way that people talk about Kingston out here is really impressive. Like, obviously, I was very high on him coming out of high school, but then I talked to some people who have been following the St. John Bosco program for years, and they have watched the absurd amount of talent that has gone through that program and also Modern Day, their arch rival, also in the Trinity League, and a lot of the players that have come out of Southern California. And they have been saying that KVA is one of the best to come through this area in a really long time. So it's like, man, that is some really, really high praise. But then he gets on campus, and I think he has made a great first impression, and the hype around him is starting to build. Like, there was hype around him coming in, and now that he's been on the field and he's been practicing with the team, it's starting to grow a little bit more. And I actually think that KVA is going to force his way onto the field this year at the Mike linebacker position. And normally, I would be pretty hesitant to play a true freshman at the Mike linebacker position, but I think that KVA is so good and he is so far advanced, or so more advanced than a normal true freshman. He is going to have a role on this defense, and I think he's going to be able to make some plays. And I think the future for him is even brighter than I thought it would be when he started his college career, and it's very, very impressive from him. Okay, then there's Bryce Young, who I think has taken some people by surprise, or at least he's taken me by surprise, because I thought eventually Bryce Young would be great. He's got the size, he's got the pedigree, he's got the will, he's got all of that, and you think, okay, once he gets into a college weight program, he sort of bulks up a little bit. Like, he's already got the frame. He's 6'7", 246 pounds, but I thought that maybe it would take a couple years before he could really be a force on the edge of a top defensive line in college football. But I think that I underestimated him. He is flashing so far in the spring practice, and I think he is so good that he is going to earn his way onto the field as well. And that is especially impressive when you consider the fact that Notre Dame has such a veteran unit on the defensive line. Jordan Botello, R.J. Oben, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, all graduate seniors, and even behind those guys, you've got some good veteran players. But I think Bryce Young, as a true freshman, he's just got it, and he's got so many things that you would want from a modern defensive end, and I really think that he has exceeded all expectations coming into spring ball, and he is going to be a force in his college career, and I think we're going to start to see that in this upcoming season. Finally, Mikey Gilbert, he's in a great position at wide receiver because he doesn't have to play. It's not like last year with Jaden Greathouse and Rico Flores, where Notre Dame was so thin at the wide receiver position that they absolutely needed those guys in the field at all times. Mikey Gilbert is ready to play, and that's great. I think he's going to be a part of the rotation. He's going to come in situations that are beneficial for him and that are more conducive to his skill set, where he can come in, make a play, or be put in a position where the coaching staff has a lot of confidence that he knows exactly where to be and he can take advantage of the situation. So really excited to see what he can do. Cam Williams is the high four-star, maybe the higher rated prospect, but then we started to hear that Mikey Gilbert was a little bit more physically ready, and that is starting to show in spring practice. Still very excited about what Cam Williams can do, but Mikey Gilbert has been very, very impressive in this spring practice session. And that's one of the reasons why Notre Dame's own social media account went out of their way to post some clips of him balling out in spring. And I'm really excited to see what he can do this season for the Irish. Okay, at number 5, I think top to bottom, the running backs are the best position group on the entire team. That might come as a surprise to some, but let's break it down. So we already knew about the two-headed monster in Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love. That is a really, really exciting tandem to be toting the ball this season. I think Jadarian Price is looking like the player that we heard about 2 years ago when he was an early enrollee freshman, and there was some rumors and there were some whispers that, hey, I know Notre Dame has Audric Esme and Logan Diggs, but this freshman, Jadarian Price, might actually be the most talented back in that room. Then, unfortunately, he tore his Achilles, wiped out his freshman season, and he played last year behind Audric Esme, had a reserve role, but you start to see flashes. I mean, he returned that kickoff for a touchdown against USC, one of the biggest plays of the season. But now I think, now that he's more than a full year removed from that serious injury, he is back to form, and I think he is starting to play like a true lead back. And then you have Jeremiah Love, who has the type of skill set that, frankly, doesn't really come around Notre Dame that often. It's why he was a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. It's why so many big-time schools wanted him, and it's why it was such a big get when Notre Dame was able to land him and get him to stick with his commitment and come to South Bend. Love has been so good at running back that they actually trust him to run drills with the wide receivers so he can become more of a threat in the passing game as well. And that's one nice thing about having Mike Denbrock, who wants to spread out the offense a little bit. You can have two running backs on the field at the same time, and with Price in the backfield and Love in the slot, you can send him around. He can come get some end arounds and some jet sweeps and things like that, and you basically have two really, really talented ball carriers on the field at the same time. So you've got those two guys leading the way, and then you've got your Bron Payne, who is really good in his role. He's a great pass blocker, and he's good in short yardage situations. I wouldn't want him to be the lead back. I don't want him to get that many carries in any other situation outside of a third and short, but still, he's good in his role, and I think, Dylan McCullough is a really good running backs coach, and he really loves Bron Payne. So even though we don't always see it on the field on Saturdays, I trust his judgment there. And then you've got the two new true freshmen, Keidron Young and Aeneas Williams. You look at Keidron Young, he already looks like he's got two kids, been divorced, and he's touching 30 years old. Obviously, I'm kidding, but still, for a true freshman, he is jacked. Not quite like the Audric Estime tank level jacked, but still just unbelievably physically gifted, and I think that, give him a couple years, and he is going to be an absolute force in the backfield as well. And then there's Aeneas Williams, who has flashed some already. He doesn't have, the physical gifts in terms of size that Young has, but he is very athletic. He is very shifty, and even though I don't think he's going to get any touches this year, I mean, he might get some, but the room is just so stacked 1 through 5 that there's really just not there's only one ball, right? Like, these guys can't all get carries, but I feel so good about this room and the future of it. And, we know that Dylan McCullough likes to rotate, and there's going to be a lot of guys who probably should be getting more touches this year, but the room is so loaded that you're going to have to share the love a little bit. All right, coming up at number 6, Billy Schrauth. Is he the next Quentin Nelson? That might be a stretch to say, but I don't think there's a competition that involves Billy Schrauth anymore. I think he's going to be starting at guard, probably the right guard. That's where he's been getting work. But he looks like the dominant player that we thought he could be when he was coming out of high school, when he was a big recruit coming out of Wisconsin. Notre Dame had to fight all the way until the very end to get him to commit to the Irish instead of staying home and playing for the Wisconsin Badgers. If you remember, when Harry Hiestand came back to Notre Dame, he absolutely loved Billy Schrauth. And a lot of people thought Billy Schrauth would start last season. I certainly thought that. He was getting the starting reps at guard in spring practice, but then he got beat out by Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler. And don't get me wrong, Rocco Spindler is still going to be in the mix as well. And Pat Coogan is the one who started more games than both Spindler and Schrauth last season, but I think that Schrauth has asserted himself as the best of the three and certainly has the highest potential maybe of any offensive lineman. That might be a stretch to say when you got Charles Jagasaw and then Gerby Lambert coming in, but I just think that Schrauth has really taken his game to another level, and that's very good because I still have my concerns about the offensive line as a whole, specifically tackle. I'm just not sold on Tosh Baker just yet. Charles Jagasaw, I just have my concerns because he's so young, even though I think the future is really bright for him. But when you have a guy like Billy Schrauth on the interior, it definitely makes you feel a little bit better. Ashton Craig, the reports on him have been really solid as well. Having a guy like Pat who can come back, who started every game last season, is certainly encouraging. But, man, I just think what I've been hearing about Billy Schrauth, what we've heard just from around campus, is that he is really becoming that player that we always thought he could be, and that is really, really exciting because, in order to have a great offensive line, I think you need to have one just absolute badass on the middle. It's great having tackles. It's very important. But, man, when you have a guard, I don't know if any player is going to be like Quentin Nelson, even though I compare Billy Schrauth to him already. But, it just sets the tone for the whole group. And I think that Billy Schrauth is going to be that guy for Notre Dame. All right. We have a couple more left here that I want to finish out with, including a pretty significant one about the coaching staff that's coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. I actually used Gametime last week to go to a Dodgers game. It was great. All thanks to Gametime. It is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You could see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. But my favorite thing about Gametime, to be honest with you, is the pricing shows your total cost up front, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms Terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, I've got 3 more developments left that I want to go over, and let's go to number 7. I think linebacker Jane Osberry is one of the most versatile defenders on the entire unit, and I think he's going to have a very unique role this season. Osberry was a standout last spring as a true freshman, had a really good blue and gold game, but I think he has elevated his game to another level over the past few weeks. It seems like every single practice you hear about, Jane Osberry is out there making plays. Now, the linebacker room is pretty crowded. I think there's still a lot of moving and shaking that's going to happen there, trying to figure out where everyone needs to play, because I've already talked about Kingston Vamasa. Jack Heiser, is going to be very important. Drake Bowen is probably the leader to be the starting Mike linebacker. So there's a lot of really encouraging things, plus Jalen Sneed. Obviously, that was my second most important development. But Jane Osberry is such a unique talent because he's a very good run stopper, but he's also very good at covering, which is pretty hard to do for someone as young as he is. He's only going into his redshirt freshman season, but he is so good in coverage that he's actually getting reps with the safeties and nickels in practice, which makes me think that in obvious passing situations, Jane Osberry is going to be out there. He can rush the passer, but he can also make plays in space, and that is something very, very important in the modern game. So I'm very excited about what Jane Osberry can do for Notre Dame. Again, I just think it's a unique situation for him. Is he going to be that rover role? Maybe, the rover is the position that comes off the field when the nickel comes on, but maybe in certain situations, like in the dime package, Osberry makes his way onto the field. And I just think it's like a fun toy that Max Bulla and Al Golden are going to get to play with this year, because he can just do so many different things for the defense that he is such a valuable asset. And I'm very excited to see what he can do. It's one of those players where you're starting to hear it over and over and over again. Now you're just man, I just want to see it on the field on Saturdays, because you're just so excited about what he can do. That is how I feel about Jane Osberry, and he's still so young, which is very encouraging. At number 8, strength and conditioning coach Lauren Lando has made a great first impression from what I hear. So far, the players just seem to love his style, his unique approach to the job, to the role, and, taking control of a whole team. He is much different than Matt Balis in personality and style, and that is not to bash Matt Balis. One thing that I hate, and this isn't even just in sports, it's okay, one thing that everyone loved is now gone, and then now there's this new thing that we also really enjoy, but now you feel the need to bash the old thing. That is not what I'm doing here. Matt Balis did a ton of really good things for the Notre Dame football program. Hell, he helped save it after that disastrous 2016 season. I would say that Brian Kelly's decision to hire Matt Balis was one of the best things he ever did while he was the head coach at Notre Dame. So nothing but good things to say about Matt Balis. However, sometimes when you bring in a new guy, it's a refreshing change of pace. And I also think that Lauren Lando is so ahead of the curve in what he tries to do and what he tries to teach that I think it's made a really big impact early on for this Notre Dame team. You've heard several players like Jane Greathouse come out and say that he feels faster, more explosive because of what Lauren Landau is teaching them. He really breaks down running and just every single step, every single movement on the football field. He breaks it down and he trains guys so that they maximize those movements. There are some strength and conditioning coaches out there, not saying Matt Balis did this, but some coaches, they just want to have guys who can bench press the most or squat the most, and they feel like their job is done. But you're not teaching bodybuilding. You're teaching football players to be great football players, and I think Lauren Landau has that down. And I also think that the way he treats guys, even though it's different than Balis, I think guys are really appreciative of that. I believe the first time he met with the team, he said he was going to treat them like professionals until they gave him a reason to think otherwise. And I think that message has really hit home for a lot of these players. Now, personally, I still have some questions about Lando that can't really be answered right away, because I think the role of a strength and conditioning coach goes beyond just coaching strength and conditioning. I think you're basically the coach of culture, and you have to set the tone. And that is what Matt Balis was so great at. He was such an important part of reestablishing that strong culture within that locker room. And I think because Loren Lando comes from the private sector, and even though he has experience running the ship for the Denver Broncos, it's just a little bit different with pros compared to college players. So I think it's just going to take some time, and the more that Lando's with the team and he's with the guys and he's doing stuff outside of just strength and conditioning when he's trying to really establish that culture and what he wants and what Coach Freeman wants out of this program, I think that it remains to be seen, but I think the early signs about Lando are extremely encouraging, and that should bode really well for this Notre Dame team. Okay, last one, and it might seem minuscule, but it's not. Mitch Jeter is money. Again, it might seem like a minor note, but having a good kicker is so important, and I think Notre Dame certainly has one in the transfer from South Carolina. We knew the stats were great when he was a Gamecock. He's deadly accurate. 23 of 25 on field goal attempts in his career. He's 3 of 5 from 50 plus. And I feel like Mitch Jeter is going to win a game for the Irish this fall. Mark it down. I don't think you can make a bet on FanDuel about that yet, but I feel really good about Mitch Jeter, what he's able to do for this team. And it's so important to have a good kicker. And like Spencer Schrader, as good as he was and all that, and the fact that he could just kick the ball a country mile, like I just feel way more comfortable when you guy who you know is just deadly accurate. Like I don't need to see the guy put a dent in the net, right? I just want to see the ball go in between the goalposts, and it seems like Notre Dame has a guy who can do that way more often than not. All right, last thing I want to say, this is a non-update update. I don't have anything to report about Benjamin Morrison's recovery from shoulder surgery. I'm sure that when Marcus Freeman talks next, he is going to talk about that more in depth. I try to get some information. Haven't gotten anything that I feel comfortable sharing yet. And obviously, this is a huge development coming out of spring practice because Benjamin Morrison is one of, if not the best player on the entire Notre Dame roster. So if he's not available, that's very concerning. But, glass half full, he could be ready by the start of fall camp, and this might not be a big deal. I just can't say whether it is or whether it isn't at this point in time. But that is going to do it for today's episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Before we head out, I have a quick programming note. This will be the last episode this week. I'm sorry, I'm only able to get up one this week. I've just been extremely busy, and then I've got to fly across the country in just a few hours to be in New York City for a wedding on Thursday, and I'm going to be there all weekend. Really appreciate your patience. I won't be gone long, I promise. Next week, we're going to be back to our regularly scheduled programming. Notre Dame has a very important scrimmage coming up on Saturday, and then the blue and gold game is the following Saturday. So there's plenty more to talk about, and I will talk about all of it once I am back after this weekend in New York City. In the meantime, please subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast, and give us a follow on social media. I'll see you guys in a few days. Have a great weekend, everybody.